Welcome back. This is now our second video on the development of the Eventuri intake for the C8 RS6. In the previous video, if you already haven't seen it, please do go back and check it out. We looked at the stock airbox, we then scanned the system, we then showed you some of the design elements of the new prototype. We also compared them back to back so you can have a visual idea of how they look next to each other. Now, in this video, we are going to look at the test results, the performance data. So first thing we're going to do is look at the results from Eurocharged Canada. We're going to speak to Slav, see how he got on with testing the system. We also have the first carbon fiber intake, which we installed on a stage 1 car and took to Santapod for quarter-mile testing, so real-world on-the-road testing. We'll show you the results of that. And then finally, we'll look at the carbon in its entirety in the car. So with the prototypes test fitted on our own car, we made sure it was fitting fine. Then the next thing was to send it off to get it tested on a dyno. Now, we've worked with Slav from Eurocharged Canada before, and I know he does some very, very extensive data logging and testing. So we contacted Slav. We sent him our prototype designs with all 4 lids. Slav had a stage 2 car he had tuned, and we then said, look, send it, put your car on the dyno, test the lids for us, and see what we get. So I've actually got Slav now with us on a Zoom call from Canada. Hey Slav, how's it going?
Hey, good, how are you?
Good. So do you just want to briefly explain the intake we sent you? You had 4 different lids and how you tested them and what kind of results you saw.
Sure. So we've had a stage 2 car. It was a customer vehicle that we had installed downpipes on and intercoolers. So we got all 4 lids. On the same day, we've swapped out the intake from stock to the version 1, then version 2, version 3, version 4, and the tubular. The best results we got was with the version 2, and it made close to 60 wheel horsepower peak. And if we follow the graph all the way to red line, it picked up just over 80 wheel horsepower, or around 80 wheel horsepower.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. I remember you sent me the results on Instagram. You sent me a message, and it took me a few minutes to kind of work out what you sent me because it just didn't make sense. So it was like, this is insane. What is this? So I didn't believe you for a moment. Like, it's just impossible, right, from an intake to get that kind of power. But you know, you showed me all the logs, you showed me the graphs, all the multiple runs you'd done, and you know, as you said, it picked up that much power. Yeah.
Trust me, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I knew there were gains to be had with an intake because we previously tested the, just the car on the dyno with the same file and no airbox, and it picked up power. Then I made a small tubular intake for it to, just drive it around in the meantime, and even that picked up power. So I knew for sure with different inlets and, a bigger airbox, it will pick up power, and the results were amazing. Like, I couldn't believe it myself. Also, it's worth to note that we did all the tests with the hood closed. So not the hood open, because obviously, cone style filters would benefit slightly from the hood open because it gets more air, but it was all done with the hood closed, and the best results were with the version 2 airbox for sure.
You gave us those results, which allowed us to then finalize the version 2, and we took that forward for production, and the results you got were amazing. That was really helpful for us as well. So big thanks to you for helping us with the development and giving all that testing data.
No problem. I was happy to help. It was awesome working with you.
Thanks a lot, Slav. I'll see you soon. I'll catch you soon.
Take care.
Take care, man. Thanks. So following on from Slav's results, we've finalized the prototype, but before moving into production, there is one final test we like to do, which is on the flow bench. So we're back at Racing. We've got the SF1020 flow bench over here, and this will give us a nice comparison without any other variables, so no temperatures involved, no rolling volts involved, all the ECU variables, but this is a pure test of maximum flow rate. So we're going to check the flow rate of the stock system versus the Eventuri system. So we finished doing the flow bench tests of the stock RS6 system versus the Eventuri systems. We did it in 2 stages, so we did the inlets by themselves first, then we added the airbox, and did the same with the Eventuri. Before I look at the results, just a quick sort of mention on the flow bench test itself. The flow bench test is a very good measure and check of the absolute flow through the intake system. There's no ECU involved, there's no rollers involved and strapping tensions, there's no temperature involved. It's just a pure check on the absolute flow rate. So it's a very good sort of sanity check on the intake itself without any other variables involved. So it's a good back-to-back comparison. So let's look at the results now. On the stock inlets, they hit a maximum pressure drop of 12.8 inches of H2O, and at that pressure drop they achieved a CFM of 662. So compare that now with the Eventuri inlets by themselves. They hit a maximum pressure drop of 8 inches and hit a maximum CFM of 835. Now clearly, just looking at the pressure drops themselves, the Eventuris had a lower pressure drop, which is better, means they're more freer flowing, and again, the CFM shows a higher CFM compared to the stock inlets. Now, you can't directly compare 835 to 662 because the pressure drops are different. So we scale those up to a pressure drop of 28 inches, which is the industry standard, and then you can do a direct comparison of CFM. Now, to scale those up, we use an equation, which is the square root of the target pressure, which is 28, divided by the actual measured pressure, and then use that as a multiplication factor on the measured CFM. So by doing that, you can see our scaled DP pressure drop 28 inches. The scaled CFM of the stock inlets was 979 CFM versus the scaled Eventuri inlets of 1,552, which is a 58% increase in flow using a corrected scaled CFM, which is a very, very good increase in the flow rate. Okay, after we did the inlets, we put this full system on top of the inlets. So the full stock intake system, let's look at the non-corrected values first. So the full system, stock, achieved a maximum pressure drop of 17.4 inches of H2O, and at that pressure drop, the flow rate achieved was 572 CFM. Then we put the Eventuri system on, and straight away you can see that the pressure drop was a lot less, 9.1 H2O, inches of H2O, with a measured CFM of 787. Let's look at those quickly before we look at the scale figures. So if you look at just the inlets versus the full system, so the stock inlets versus full system, the pressure drop went up obviously because there's more restriction from 12.8 to 17.4 inches of H2O. So obviously there's an increase of pressure of just over 5 or just under 5 inches of H2O. Now look at the difference between that and the Eventuri system. So the Eventuri inlets themselves was 8 inches versus the full system was just 9. So it's only a 1 inch of H2O increase when we put the Eventuri system onto the Eventuri inlets. That shows that the Eventuri intake is not adding that much more of a restriction on top of the inlets, whereas the stock airbox is adding a lot more of a restriction on the stock inlets. Right, now scaling those up to 28 inches of H2O, we can now look at the scaled flow rate. So the stock full system achieved a scaled flow rate of 726 CFM, and the Eventuri system scaled up to 28 inches achieved 1,380 CFM. Now that's huge. That's over 90% increase in flow compared to the stock system. that just purely backs up now what we've seen from Slav with the intake on the dyno, achieving on his stage 2 car 60 horsepower and more than 60 at the highest delta along the graph, which is a huge increase in power. But this flow bench backs up that result, because it's an absolute test of the flow on the flow bench. No other variables involved, showing a 90% increase of flow rate, Eventuri versus stock. So here we have the first carbon fiber intake for the C8 RS6. This is in matte finish, so we're going to be offering matte and gloss finish. Being the first one, there are a couple of flaws on this, but that's fine for us. It's just for testing. I'll show you the intake. We've assembled it, so the base, the lid, and the two inlets all together. Show you the back of this. So as you can see, the underside, lots of details, lots of intricate angles and grooves. The inside of the carbon is here. Obviously you can see it's pure carbon fiber, pre-preg. There is no glass fiber involved. So you can see the weave on the inside as well. You can also see the openings now, and you should be able to see the filter on the inside, the BMC filter. Much larger than the stock openings, all the way across as well. Looks amazing. I really like the way it's turned out in carbon. As expected, everything looks much better in carbon fiber. So I'm now going to fit this to the car, and then we'll show you how it looks. Okay, so the first carbon fiber intake has been installed onto the C8 RS6. This is in the matte finish, and I love it. I think it looks absolutely incredible. In the matte finish, you can see more of the lines and the details in the carbon, and I think this engine bay and this car actually deserves something like this, because it's such an imposing, such an aggressive car, and you open that bonnet and you see that stock airbox, which is so kind of small and plastic and cuboid. Really underwhelming. Now it almost looks weaponized. So looked great. How does it perform? We are now going to go to Santa Pod to do some quarter mile testing, do some on the road draggy time testing, and see how it fares. Car's just stage 1, so it's just a map on there. And the first thing we did was take the car with the stock airbox, and we did several runs down the drag strip with just the stock airbox. With that done, getting a repeatable result with the launch control activated, the airbox was removed, and I put the Eventuri carbon airbox into place, and we repeated the process. Did several runs, got the gearbox warmed up, got the launch control kicked in, and got some repeatable results. So I have the results in front of me. Knowing what we know from Eurocharged Canada on the Stage 2 car, which was phenomenal, we really wanted to see what that translated to on the road, but on a Stage 1 car. And the results kind of do back up what we've seen on the Stage 2 car. So let's look at the quarter mile times first. On the Stage 1 car, according to Santapod timing, with the stock gearbox, the car did an 11.1 second pass consistently. We then changed that over to the Eventuri, and that went down from 11.1 to 10.72 seconds, which is a pretty impressive result. But more valuable to that is the ET, so the speed of the car at the quarter mile point. With the stock gearbox, it was 125.8 miles per hour, and with the Eventuri, it went up to 129.7, which is a 4 miles per hour gain on the quarter mile, which is, if you know quarter mile racing, that's a significant gain. And that really does tell the story of a gain in horsepower on the car. 4 miles per hour on a heavy car like that at quarter mile is quite a decent gain in performance. The dragger time is very similar, slight difference because of tolerances, but on draggy we were showing stock gearbox at 11.2 seconds on the quarter mile, and on the Eventuri that dropped to 10.75. So very similar to the Santapod official timing, and again just backs up the fact that the gain with the Eventuri, all I did was change the Eventuri intake, nothing else was changed. So the same map, same everything else on the day back to back, just backs up the fact that the intake itself is providing a significant increase in performance to the car on the road, real world testing. Once we did our Santapod testing on the quarter mile, we wanted to get some more results on the dyno, on a Stage 1 car and also on a stock map. So we sent our carbon intake, which was one of the first ones, to our dealer Awesome, based in the UK, who used their APR map as a Stage 1 on their own car. So I'm going to hand it over now to Tabby and Mark from Awesome.
Hi guys.
Guys, how did the fitment go from the start? And then just give us a rundown on how you tested it, and then, you know, the results.
I'm going to leave the technical side obviously to Tabby here, as he did the whole of the process of fitting obviously the intake and then going through a strategical process of obviously checking in 4th gear and 5th gear and what we were logging.
Yeah, so basically fitment real straightforward, nice, easy to fit. In Stage 1 form, what we did was we did back-to-back testing in 4th gear, and then we did back-to-back testing in 5th gear. So both with the stock intake and then with the Eventuri intake installed. It made upwards of like 40 horsepower on pretty much every run we did with this Stage 1. So no differences at all, other than the fact that we changed the intake. So the tune was the same, the car never left the dyno, and we tested it in the exact same manner. So it was 2 back-to-back 4ths and then 2 back-to-back 5ths.
I mean, at some points we saw up to a 60 horsepower gain in the Delta.
Yeah, I mean,
and peak figure was a 50 horsepower. And what I will say is, I've never seen a smile so big on his face. To do an induction kit like that, obviously, you know, yes, it's got the turbo inlets, but to get that sort of result from an induction kit on a high-powered car anyway was just. It was mind-blowing.
With no adjustments being made into the
tune, yeah, and that's the key point. No adjustments made in the tune whatsoever. That was literally on with the intake.
Drop-in component, and it brought it to life. And we even noticed with the power with the stock airbox, the power would derate, and you had a lot less of that as well. So obviously, it was a lot nicer for airflow and keeping it cooler as well. So in the same sort of testing, it seemed to be better in sort of regenerating. So it wasn't derating as much with the Eventuri on that.
Good. Yeah, so I remember when you guys did the test, it was on a Friday, and then Mark, I said to you, so give me the results, and you were like, no, wait for Tabby. he needs to tell you. I was like, well, what? Tell me what the result.
I wanted to leave you in suspense. It was, you know, you actually messaged me, wasn't you, and said to you about and we were video timing, and yeah, his face was just lit up. You know, we never expected that sort of result.
We were looking for some increase, but that was
maybe 15, 20 horsepower.
Yeah,
but to do what it did.
So stage 1 APL map testing done, and then you guys flashed it back to the stock map and repeated the back-to-back testing. So how did that go?
Yeah, so exactly the same sort of testing method, but with the stock ECU software on there. And yeah, gains were there. They weren't obviously as high as we were seeing with the tune, but it was upwards of like 10 horsepower on every single run we did. Phenomenal again. Even just the drive, the difference between the drive in with the stock airbox on and that, you just can feel the car. It really transforms the car.
Yeah, so I think on the maps, the dyno graphs you sent over, the best fourth gear on the stock airbox versus the best fourth gear on the intake, the peak gain was, I think, about 15 horsepower, and then I measured some deltas up the graph a bit, and it got to almost 22 horsepower just on the stock, which is that's a really good result. Just that in itself, I'd have been really happy with. But obviously, it shows how restrictive the stock airbox is when you start adding more power to it and demanding more from the turbos.
Yeah, I mean, from a tuning,
you can see it. It's a restriction even in stock form. As we've been able to open up some power just by sort of making it.
What's really great about this intake is, from a tuning perspective, when you take a customer to stage 1, and obviously you tell the customer that there's an additional intake that we can fit to this car, it smiles from a stock car to a stage 1, and then you've got the double smiles, which doesn't normally happen. All right, when you put induction, yes, I think I can feel the power. You can feel this power. You can feel the car. Absolutely. You can hear the car. That's what makes this so exciting about the product, on this platform, because it's now really clear. You get that when you go to stage 2. Well, you've already gone to stage 2 sort of thing when you put this induction kit on. So you've got, I can only imagine what this is like at stage 2 level, with the induction. But you've got a really nice, definitive stage 1, extra, 50, 60 horsepower on this, when you're at stage 1 level. And then, you'll know more about what that does when it's at stage 2. But yeah, absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, so yeah, brilliant. So basically, the intake hand in hand with the tune is just a phenomenal combination for this platform. So it just amps things up so much more. It's a good all-round package.
I would say it's probably one of the most exciting products
you've been excited
that I've been excited about for a long time, because it's not just adding an intake that gives you a little bit more noise. It's that amount of power is just phenomenal.
All right, guys, thank you so much for that. That's really useful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the testing.
The opportunity to test it.
Yeah, brilliant. So that's pretty much it for that. And thanks again. We'll be in touch, and we'll get you some kits as soon as we can.
Thanks, Bilal.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
So testing's done, development's done, and I am very pleased. Actually, I'm shocked at the results that we've got from the system. To achieve almost half a second improvement in the quarter mile is huge just for an intake system. And I actually remember when I sent the prototype to Slav at Eurocharged Canada, he sent me a private message on Instagram and just sent me a dyno graph. And I opened the dyno graph and I was really confused as to what I was looking at, because the difference was so huge. I was questioning him, like, Slav, what are you showing me here? And he was like, this is what the intake has done on his stage 2 car. And I couldn't believe it. It was absolutely massive, as we've shown you. But he was, convinced. He said, I've done it several times. I've run it several times. The result's consistent. I've done it on 2 cars. The result's consistent. So yeah, it's incredible. It actually goes to show how restrictive the stock airbox and those inlets actually are. Tuning these cars, stage 1 and then stage 2, with more demand from the turbos, makes that restriction even more apparent. And for us, then, having had the entire intake system redesign. So not just the lid, but the base of the airbox as well, changing that angle, increasing the volume across the slam panel area, and redesigning the entire configuration has made all the difference. It's not just we've put a lid on the stock airbox and changed the filter. No, we've designed everything, and the results show the advantage and the benefit of doing that. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and our development process and the detail we've gone to. We are now in full production, so please contact your local Eventuri dealer in your region to find out about the pricing and availability. Please do join us again for our next development project.
Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please remember to subscribe to the channel and turn your notifications on. If you want to join the conversation, please drop us a comment below and we will do our best to respond to you. And if you're running out of things to watch, why don't you watch one of these two?